1. Okay. All right, as a preliminary matter, this is John Brescher, the chair of the Town Government Study Committee, permitting to confer that all members and persons anticipating the agenda are present. Can you hear me? Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Rick Atherton.
Aye.
Campbell Sutton.
Aye.
Linda Williams.
Aye.
Tucker Holland.
Aye.
So good morning. This open meeting of the Town Government Study Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations for the meeting. Ensuring public access is unsure of public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment from those members of the public that have joined via Zoom. For this meeting, the Town Government Study Committee is convening by video conference via the Zoom app as posted on the town's website, depending on how the public may join. For Zoom meetings, please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I, the chair, knows otherwise. Now going to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, let's go over some ground rules. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold to your name as called further. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly. For your response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. And finally, each vote taken will be conducted via roll call vote. And please remember to use your little icon to raise your hand. Okay, so first item on the agenda, we have approval of the agenda as written.
So moved.
Okay, motion made. Is there a second?
Rick second, or
Thank you, Rick.
Tucker, I couldn't tell.
We're going to go through, let's see, roll call vote. Rick Atherton.
Aye.
Campbell Sutton.
Campbell.
You're on mute. Campbell.
Aye.
Thank you. Linda Williams.
Aye.
Tucker Holland.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. Fantastic. All right, next item is public comment. Seeing as there are no members of the public present, we'll skip over that. Approval of the minutes of May 20th, 2021. I was unable to get those in reasonable form, so with your indulgence, we'll push those over to either tomorrow or the following, or actually will have to be the following meeting because I don't think I have that on the agenda. So stay tuned on those, but we'll get those over. Okay, so let's go to the, and by the way, I believe Curtis is going to try to make it, but he has St. Paul's stuff, so he may be a little bit late.
That's why we met at 10 o'clock, so he could get that done.
I know.
Was that that was the correct impression?
La la la.
Yep.
Okay, so let's go into the first item on the first item for the meat of the agenda is the discussion of the finalization of the report to the select board and town meeting. Topics to include in the report and any motions related thereto. Okay. I believe we were carrying over some motions from the last time. So if anyone wants to start diving into those with some motions, that certainly works.
I think we got through all of Curtis's though.
I think we got through all of Curtis's.
Yeah.
I think we were waiting on, Rick was doing a more comprehensive one, I think, with that we started with NP and EDC, and that was going to be a combination of having all sort of a suggestion. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Rick, but I was to have, I think all boards and commissions have better just the gist of it being better communication amongst each other to sort of review their charters.
John, I hear you. I think
Yes,
I think we passed that motion verbally, but it wasn't in writing.
We didn't.
That may not be.
No,
I don't think we passed the motion. I
No,
think
we
we
didn't.
agreed to bring it over to this time with sort of that as the spirit of what the motion will be.
All right, I got you. I'm sorry, I did not write that. I
Okay.
will do,
Yeah.
I will do so.
I think that you and I volunteered to try to put something together and we both got distracted.
It happens.
Yeah.
Oh, Tucker,
happens.
thank you for saving me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Campbell, your hand's up. What's going on?
Okay, so one of the things I wanted to wonder about and see what people thought about was I know I don't have it up on my screen, sorry, I just barely walked in the door, but in the that he was making regarding the NP and EDC or something like that. And it had been expanded, which I thought was a good idea, to all committees, boards, commissions. And what I was wondering is what people thought about also including something where that review be done every 5 years and that they be encouraged to present it to the Town Government Study Committee, since that could potentially coincide and would give some touch point, not let's just do this because, well, we're sort of required to do it and we'll just skip it, but because it would be very helpful for a committee such as our own to hear, to look at the mission statements and the presentation of how they're on track or need to be adjusted either in the wording of it or in the way actions are being taken or not taken on it, something like that. So just like to get people's thoughts on that.
Well, I'm not willing to put anything in this at all that relates to the planning commission, period. So that's, I'm intractable on that. So you guys do what you want to do, but I'm
I
not going
get-
to be in favor of it.
Linda, I get your hang up about that particular thing, but I believe it was broadened to all boards, committees and commissions or something along those lines. We don't have the exact wording because it hasn't been done up, but I was thinking more globally. I'm not trying to pick on anyone. I just find even for myself, if I have a goal set and I never review it, I never achieve it. So reviewing your goals and your missions is not some left field activity. It's very important. There's a whole thing on that in continuous quality or something like that. It was out of Japan, but we did it.
Continuous improvement.
Yeah. We applied that in education and it was very helpful. So I'm just sort of suggesting something like that broadly. I'm not trying to pick on anyone. I mean, it would include this Town Government Study Committee as well, and the Tree Advisory Committee or the Roads and Rights of Ways. And
I don't have a
So-
problem with that in concept, so long as it's not specifically related to any one board.
right, it's not,
Yeah.
Yeah.
John, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So it seems to me, since this was, I think, agreed not to be a charter change or insertion motion by the committee, it's more of a comment on, we think it would be helpful if. And I think in some ways, I've always thought the select board would be wise to have a brief report by each of their committees annually. And the roads and right of way could come in, you give them no more than 10 minutes and they can write a report or whatever. But at least it shows there's contact between the two parties. And we could recommend that. I don't think we want to make it a absolute requirement, Campbell, because it just isn't likely to happen. So if that makes sense to anybody, or biannually, I don't know that I care how often it's done.
Well, I think it's a very interesting idea. I think it's a good idea. I find it, as you were saying that, I was reminded that I don't know if they still ask this of committees, but I recall years ago, town administration would ask each committee for a report to put into the annual report. I haven't seen that in a few years now. to be
Right,
honest.
so I think we're trying to sort of gin it
Yeah.
up again to help make sure we're all on the same team, so to speak.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, frankly.
So why don't we agree that Tucker and I will actually try and get to this? We may not by tomorrow morning, but by our meeting next week, we'll have a draft. Tucker, does that sound good?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, and we'll come back, John, and probably incorporate, oh, let me mute this, sorry.
Okay. Okay, Curtis, welcome.
I just got rid of Harvard commencement on my first meeting.
Nice. So, well, does anybody have any, I'm trying to recall, I don't know if we had any other further motions to flesh out from the last meeting. Up, Campbell, you have your hand up.
Well, I think, Linda, were you going to put something together to add on to that paragraph for the Parks and Recreation Department?
It was pretty cut and dry. I've got his thing right in front of me here. I don't know if I have to add anything to it. I got the November thing right in front of me.
So I guess that's actually a nice segue, if you don't mind me interrupting. If we don't have any, we can do another motion either tomorrow or at the final meeting, so to speak, before town meeting. But the other thing that we can go through is making sure that we are still on board, for lack of a better term, with our with the memo that we wrote last November. And while we can continue to sort of tweak the language, just make sure that the items are what we're still looking at. Campbell, you have your hand up.
I do. I had one other thought regarding Town Government Study Committee.
Go
That
for it.
section written up, and I was wondering, one of the things that I appreciated, and so I'm just looking for thoughts on this. One thing I appreciated in some of these way town government study committees are appointed was they were not appointed by those who are within the government, so directly. And they used town moderators and the town clerk to appoint committee members. And I sort of like that, given that this is supposed to, or is answerable to town meeting, which is run by the town moderator. Do you see what I'm saying there?
Right.
And just to be totally off track, what just came to my mind saying town clerk is, do we know what the number of registered voters is on Nantucket? I thought it was not.
It's always come up just under 9,000 or something like that. Linda, does that sound right?
I think we have more registered now as of last November, so I have no idea what it is now.
Well, we could,
Okay.
but take that number as a proxy, plus or
Okay.
minus 500.
Right. So what I'm thinking is I had read to you what I had written and sent to Tucker regarding the government studying the new form of government. And I think one of the additional facts that we could put in for a data point is the number of registered voters, which does not at this time put us in a position to really be able to move forward with a broad-based research thing. So anyway, I'll see if she can throw a number at me, and I'll try and add that in. But anyway, back to my other piece on who appoints the Town Government Study Committee. What do people think?
I think town moderator is a great idea.
I agree.
Yeah, we discussed this a little bit before.
Yeah.
Because I think I mentioned that, this came once about the finance committee and we stayed where we are, but I think that's not a bad idea here. You might get a very different mix of people that way, who knows? But I think we need to make sure there's a process by which people apply to the moderator, much like they do to the board, the select board. In other words, right now the moderator is sort of off there in freedom land. And I'm sure the moderator wouldn't intend to stay that way. She'd like to hear from people, but I don't mind going that direction. So if you want to do that, I think there's the Town Government Study Committee, a bylaw. Does someone remember specifically? I think it is a bylaw, or is it a charter?
The charter.
It's in the charter. It was it's standard across the state.
All right, so that would make it, I'm not sure about that one, it might be, but that would make it a recommendation for a charter change to change the appointing authority.
Yes.
A change appointing authority.
Yeah, I would recommend to do this. What we should do is get a copy of the charter paragraph in front of us, maybe tomorrow morning. That's not hard to get. And look at that language specifically and say, in order to recommend this change, we would, with town council's help, strike select board and enter town moderator or something. Might be that simple.
Okay, so another thought along the same lines that I have appreciated in other town government study committees appointments is that a staff member has been appointed to take minutes and post meetings and things like that. And that that to me seems like an onerous task with the amount of research that needs to be done. And so I'd like to hear what people think about including that as a piece to the charter.
I just want to add in before we move on to that, section 2.2 of the charter, article 2, obviously legislative functions. Section 2.2 is the town moderator. And we already did vote to recommend 3 years, but it says also in such additional powers and duties as are authorized by this charter. So that's where it would go.
There we go.
Great.
Campbell, about having a staff person do this, that would, it makes sense to me that they have that all of these committees have a staff member, not just town government study, but roads and right of way. It seems like most do. I think the stock answer we got from town administration was that they had too many people, or the people were too busy.
Yeah, they can't, there's no way. They're gonna get massive pushback, and that doesn't belong in the charter anyway, but
yeah,
it's massive pushback.
I think it's a good idea to have someone either taking minutes or helping to shepherd the process of scheduling, etc., and compiling information. It's not that onerous of a task, but it would be nice to have someone from the town doing it as well.
Yeah, what I would be aiming for is one, continuity, but also to really allow each of the members to, tackle topics and really research them instead of having to spend their time,
Not.
other documentation that documents the meeting that had, that can be viewed online. Anyway, it's just a thought going forward. It might be something the next committee would like to look at. I know everybody's over the top busy. I'm not alone in over the top busy. And in the spring is a terrible time. So I get where everyone's, you've got town meeting coming up, the whole thing. Anyway,
yeah.
I'm just putting it out there because I think it is, other towns do find the personnel to do that. It's not like they would write the report or do anything like that. It would just be, an hour or whatever it is throughout the 1 year to 15-month period. I know that our charter says appointed for 1 year. I'm thinking, based on some of the research I did, that we might want to look at something like 15 to 18 months, so that you could have a chunk of time at the beginning, gather all of your topics together, have another chunk of time to do all the research, and then have a shorter amount of time to just focus on doing the report. So I'm not sure what people think about expanding the months, since we've been at it 3 years.
I just don't, we're trying to get through the topics for the charter revisions, and that's not appropriately in the charter.
Well, it is in the charter for the Town Government Study Committee.
It is, because each one of us, each one of these boards that I'm on, we have a chairman, vice chairman, sometimes we have a secretary, it just depends. Or we appoint somebody among ourselves to take the minutes. I got that. But they don't have another staff position here. We have one person who takes the minutes for all of them, all the regulatory boards. Terry does the minutes for the ZBA,
HDC.
and there's
Concom?
a couple of other ones.
Well, we have a chairman who does a great job anyway. Keep it up.
Thanks, Curtis.
Keep it up.
Soothe me with those sweet lies.
Keep it up.
I tend to agree with Linda. I think even changing to the moderator is, going to get people's attention somewhere. And I would stick, I think, to that simple change. We could make a comment that, just an observation by our experience, that more involvement of town administration and town council would be very helpful to the process. Maybe follows
Yes.
both. And just
I think that helpful, Rick, you've got it right there. I think that one sentence that says it would have been helpful to have support staff.
yeah, because I think we all feel left out in the cold and they ignored us on purpose.
Yes, and it was very effective. So there you go.
Let's get even with them.
So go to the next point on, which is in the charter as well, is the length of time that we're appointed for. We're appointed for 1 year, as it's stated in the charter. And I'm wondering what people think about more realistic timeline of 15 to 18 months.
Well, I think that I don't know if we should waste time on that, only because the selectmen can reappoint, which is what they've done.
Well, so it's a great point, Linda. I suppose the interesting one, though, is that if we take the appointing power out of the select board and put it in the moderator, I mean, is it going to be burdensome for the moderator to keep appointing and reappointing, et cetera? Or do you just, I tend to agree initially with that, with Linda's point that, look, the select board can keep reappointing as necessary. But if we are making a suggestion that we move this out of select board realm, it'll be, I'm not sure how that plays out. Tucker, yes, go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to say that, I mean, I'm assuming that this would follow a similar process to other appointments, other committee appointments, even though it would be the moderator, and 15 to 18 months would be like off cycle. So to me, like either a year or 2 year appointment.
Well, theoretically, we should have been done after 1 year. So that's why I don't think we should waste time on this.
Yeah, I agree with Linda. Before you go messing around with this, I think you'd have to have some indication of support by town administration or the moderator or something.
Yeah.
To get a sense how it's going to play out.
With this.
Soon let that go.
Okay, that sounds good. Thanks for giving me feedback on that.
I have a couple of pet peeves. I talked to John about them yesterday when we were crossing paths in the parking lot. We already dealt with the warrant signature thing. We're going to have a lot of stuff to say about the form of government. I think that's where the rubber meets the road. Parks and Rec, I have to add a couple of sentences to that, which I will do. There's a section in here, 2.6, the rights of non-resident property owners. It's actually taxpayers. It says one spokesperson for the town's non-resident property owners shall be allowed to speak at any annual special town meeting on matters before the meeting, but only at such times during a meeting as the moderator may allow in accordance with the rules of order. Here's a problem. We've run into it this week. Because that awful Article 90 has raised such hackles among locals and non-resident taxpayers. They are coming to town meeting and sitting over in their section. They are very unhappy with the fact that only one person can speak on their behalf. There are multiple issues involved in this warrant. And Sarah is sticking to have to be the one person who represents 80% of the freaking tax base. I'd like to go back and look at that section 2.6 and see if there's something we can change here. There was a reason why we did it at the time, 20 years ago, but it doesn't exist at the moment because times have changed. So I think we need to have a conversation about that section. Lauren does have a comment about that section.
Curtis, you're up. On Curtis.
Don't forget that the article is brought forward by Tobias, who is a resident and a taxpayer and can speak all he wants.
No, he's not a taxpayer, but that's a different subject.
Well, okay. But what I'm saying is you've got people who are sponsoring the article who can go to town meeting and speak.
He's not speaking. That has nothing to do with what I'm saying. This section in the charter is specifically rights of non-resident property owners.
Yeah, I know.
And it says only one of them can speak. And
But
that's
you're
not
hanging it
fair.
on Article 90.
Whether it's Article 90 or how we're misusing their tax money or whatever. We had this discussion with those non-resident. I'm not sure you were there, Curtis, when we did that. We were in the we were in the community room in the first floor of the police station, like a year and a half ago, 2 summers ago.
2 summers ago.
2 summers ago, 2 years ago, where they wanted more of a voice. They expressed concerns. They have a right to express concerns and they have a right to a voice. Now they can't vote clearly, but they should be able to speak. But limiting it in the charter to one person representing 80% of the tax base is wrong. And I still feel that way. So I think we need to look at that section 2.6 and have a comment there that section needs to change. I don't know how to change it right now, unless you guys digest it overnight, but we need to deal with that section. That's one pet peeve. My other pet,
Campbell.
I'm not done though. I have one
Okay,
more.
we'll go back to you.
All right.
Carrying on about things that are a little late. So,
No, I brought this up 2 years ago, Campbell.
no, I know. And I really appreciate your fighting for the wealthy who don't seem to have a voice. So I appreciate that. But my comment was going to be twofold. First, I think that's a perfect example of what could potentially happen with representative town government, where you only have 1 or 2 people speaking for a whole community that lives somewhere, and they may have a dissenting voice that they don't get to have heard at a meeting because their representatives aren't interested in the minority voice. So there was that part. The other thing is we did try to do some research on how other towns are dealing with the non-voting taxpayers. I believe John was in touch with Dylan Fernandez and Sear. So we have been doing due diligence on researching it. We just have not gotten back any information other than this is a problem in many towns. I can tell you it's a problem in my hometown of Stowe, Vermont. And it's been a problem for a long time, but the town keeps carrying on and they keep coming. So.
Well, my point is the tax.
Yeah, go ahead, Linda.
I've got another
Tucker.
say this. My problem is that no other town has a majority of their tax base paid by non-voting taxpayers. I'm familiar with Stowe. I used to ski up there. We had a place that we had. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about all of us being employed. We're talking about them paying the teacher salaries, the cop salaries, everybody's salaries in the town. We're talking about keeping the schools going. They have more of a stake in this island than everybody else. And I object to the use wealthy non-resident taxpayers because my uncle is not a wealthy person. We happen to have a family home here we've had for 50 some odd years. So that's different. We're talking about people that are not wealthy, that also have a say in what happens to whatever taxes they're paying here. So I think this is unfair. And I think that we're limiting it to one person. I'm just saying, change that language in 2.6 and take out limited to one person. And Sarah can always decide on how many and who to speak, because in order to speak as a non-resident taxpayer or a consultant for the town who sits down front, they have to notify Sarah. She has to know where you are. She has to know your name, et cetera, et cetera. Sarah can make that determination, but to limit it in the charter to one person is not appropriate. That's all I'm saying, is that first two words, one person. Take those out, and then the rest of it stands alone. Sarah makes that decision. We can say it's left up to the town moderator to decide that. It does mention the moderator in this little section, but I think we need to deal with that.
All right, Tucker, your hand was up next.
Well, I think Rick is maybe offering like a clarification of something. I mean, I have a comment, but I would let Rick clarify first.
Yeah, you know, my recollection here is that 2.6 is actually not limiting. Sarah, at her discretion.
No, it says
It
shall.
says she shall, well, wait,
Shall.
she
One
shall be allowed,
spokesperson.
but she
Yep.
allows consultants who are
Yes,
not residents or voters to speak at town meeting at her discretion. And she may already have the power. So I would recommend, number one, we ask her that. This sort of says, the way it's written to me, Linda, it says she shall do at least one, but it doesn't mean she can't do more necessarily. So it may already be there in effect, is my clarification.
So my comment was really consistent with Linda. I mean, this is something that has been on my radar for a long time too. I mean, I do not think we should be using what might be perceived to be disparaging tone in talking about seasonal residents. I mean, we are very fortunate, I think, to have a seasonal community that we do.
supports this community in big time.
Well, in many, they make contributions in many ways. So I think it is highly appropriate that we ensure that they have the opportunity to have more than one voice heard at a town meeting. They cannot vote, but they certainly can articulate their thoughts that town meeting may find relevant.
And how we're spending their money.
At the
Rick,
discretion of the moderator.
So I think you can leave it to the moderator, but I'm just saying, this is going to be interesting when you start thinking through. Does that mean anybody who raises their hand? Does that mean the moderator selects so that she's the manager and allows this group to speak and not that group? I mean, you can see this goes on and on and on. So it'll take a fair amount of thought.
That's what's happening right now. One person that's affected by 90, I'm going to have to speak on 90 on behalf of my uncle, because then several of us who have family who have houses here are going to have to speak on behalf of our families who are summer non-resident taxpayers, because we can get the floor because we live here. And there's a lot of us that came here in the 70s and 80s whose families still have summer homes, but those of us who live here, we're taxpayers, but we live
So
here.
I think that the language might, I don't know if we have the specific language of how to modify 2.6, but I think that a comment at a minimum about addressing the ability of the non-residents community or non-residents to have their voice heard is something that should be either further studied or addressed or what have you. I mean, I think we're being kind of tone deaf to what we've heard for several years if we're not commenting on that.
that's fair. Campbell, you're up. Your hand's been up.
Yeah, with all that's been said, I feel like the moderator should be involved in the discussion of this, because as Rick said, and as we could all see, if she picks on letting one group speak and someone else not speak, then she's carrying the burden of the whole thing, which is why, even though she has discretion for a greater number of people, she may only go with one because that's what's specified. If you specify 3, that, in other words, giving her safe harbor and not hanging her out on a limb to be, wow, the moderator wouldn't let me speak and blah, blah, blah. I really want it to be sort of fair and
No, you have to identify, the way it works, Campbell, is you have to identify yourself to her way before the meeting. She has a list and that's it.
No, I understand that.
Not a
I'm
free
just,
for all.
you want to rewrite this. I'm just suggesting, not that anybody has to go with it. If you want to rewrite it, I just thought having the moderator involved in the fine tuning of how that should go is either part of the recommendation that Tucker is speaking of, or is in part of the motion that is made. Otherwise, I think you're, anyway, that's all I had to say.
Duly noted. Curtis, your hand's up.
The way I'm hearing it is, again, I think the moderator should have something to say about what we bring out, but the thing that comes to mind to me is pre-register with the moderator, so she could accept 3 or 4 people. She could talk with them, find out what they want to say, make sure they're not all beating the same horse. And so again, get Sarah involved, but pre-registration to speak is sort of where I'm coming from.
Well, that's already required, Curtis. You can't just raise your hand at town meeting. She has to have a list and know exactly where you are and what you're saying.
But it gives her the option to put 4 or 5 people on the list instead of 1.
Yes, but I think I go back to what Rick said, is that we have a comment about this section about being duly cognizant of their impact on this community and giving them a voice at town meeting. I think that
Fine.
kind of sentence is good.
Well, so comment along those lines are great.
So since I'm gearing up to make progress here, does someone want to make a motion to note that on our list that we should have a comment effectively stating that we should look into ways to broaden the voice of the seasonal residents? Tucker, your hand's up.
Well, so Rick and I are working on that other comment. I'm happy to work on a comment for this, for consideration at the same time.
I'd like to do that instead, Tucker. I already have it in my head.
Okay, great.
Yeah. As long as we get it, I'm happy.
Is this for
I don't know if it'll be for tomorrow or next.
I'll get it for tomorrow.
Okay. So we'll have it for tomorrow then.
I have one more thing.
Yes, Linda, go for it.
My pet peeve, and it has been pet peeve since the day we did the charter, Bernie, myself, Curtis, Jack, is elected versus appointed. All of the regulatory boards should be elected. The select board can maintain the alternates, which they did. They kept the alternates from planning board and they kept the alternates on the HDC. But the HDC is elected. The planning board is elected. The zoning board and the Concom should be elected. And I've been on this song, this just going on and on and on. These boards are accountable directly to the people that they affect. They're not a committee. They're not some, look at the road, look at this, look at that kind of crap. They have real impact on properties and people of the town, and we should be directly, like the HDC, like the planning board, directly accountable to the people that we affect every single meeting. And that means the ZBA, who needs to be held accountable, and the Concom, who definitely needs to be held accountable. So that's still my biggest pet peeve here. And I'm not getting off that soapbox.
Yeah, Campbell, your hand's up.
I just have a question And have you looked into other towns to see what is it? Are ZBAs typically elected in other towns? I mean, how much research have we done to find, just, you know, for a recommendation, how much research have we done to find out how these boards are treated? In the diagrams, schematics that I've seen in other governments, those typically fall as committees or commissions under either the town manager or the select board. And I haven't seen any that were elected. In other words, on the top line there. So that's what I'm wondering.
I don't know, but I know that the Concom and the ZBA don't have as much impact in other smaller towns. They have a massive impact here because of the logistics here and the land here. I mean, this is these need to be accountable to somebody, and they're not.
I hesitate to ask this question, but do we know why a CBA and Concom are appointed and everybody else is elected?
No, we had this debate, 20 some odd years ago, and we just left it alone. The planning board is under state statute. We just sort of left it alone. I got, the HDC elected, but we just left it alone.
Rick, your hand's up.
Oh, just to be instructive, and Linda may remember this, and this comes up periodically over the years. The HDC, I think our HDC is quite unique, and most in the state are appointed, so that it's not necessarily a common result to appoint these regulatory agencies. And I've never been one to be in favor of changing our system in that regard. Maybe I want to change the HDC to be appointed, Linda.
You already tried that and I beat you out on it, so don't even bother.
Yeah, well, I understand. We had the same discussion, and the last government study committee recommended changing the planning board from elected to appointed, and that didn't pass either. But I'm just pointing out, it's quite so simple that everybody concurs that the issues involved in this decision are only those presented by Linda. So,
but I'm never going to get off it.
well, you don't have to get off it, but I for one wouldn't be willing to vote for a change in that in the way we're handling those commissions right now. I think it's working just fine, and that's my view on that issue. And I think that's the view of a lot of people.
It is, but I like accountability, and they affect people's lives, whereas some committee randomly appointed by the select board does not.
Well, I think we all
Not for
assume that.
informational purposes. It's
I
for
understand. The accountability runs back to the Board of Selectmen. If you don't like their appointments, change the board.
No, it doesn't work that way, and there's too much damage created by people who don't know what they're doing.
All right. Any other comments on this one? So I don't know what we want to do with this, but my sense for just the committee as I'm talking, I think that we have at least 2 or 3 motions to do tomorrow morning as it relates to, I don't know, between Rick, Tucker, and Linda, or the following week. And then I think so we can have sort of time to digest it. I think I would recommend going through our memo, and I mean, I know we've hit on a lot of the topics, but just make sure we're on the same page with those those topics are in there, and then we start to compile and get ready to present. I mean, does that sound about right to everyone else?
Well, that's what I was going to suggest, that we do the little things that we're still got out there, and that we go through that memo 1 paragraph at a time and bang it out, because I think that already sets up the template.
So, Curtis, your hand's up.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this. We've done a lot of good motions, but I'd like to read each of them in its entirety as we put the report together.
I think that makes a whole lot of sense. I will try. I don't know. I will try to get the motions ready for tomorrow.
No, do it for next week. First.
I'll do them for next week. I'd like to get all the motions and I'd like to get it out. I'd love to get it out by Friday so you can read them.
Yes,
You know, so you can actually digest what they are, not just
the real words.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Yes, the real words, as it were. Yes,
Yep.
Rick.
I did read the report again for today's meeting, and just an observation. I thought it was fairly descriptive and written in most cases quite well. And what we've been doing is taking a lot of the comments in here and actually having motions and voting on them specifically in ways that I think are consistent with the implications of the memo in the first place. So
That's,
anyway, that's my read on it.
I'm going to pat myself on the back for that one. Good job, committee. Way to go,
Yeah.
gang. Yeah. All right. Yes,
I
Campbell.
Just have one quick one. Because I know we had made a change in a motion on the Park and Rec Commission versus the department. And in number 9 of the memo, which says revisions to the Parks and Recreation Commission, I'm thinking maybe commission is the wrong word. Do you think, Linda, or should it be department, revisions to the Parks and Rec department,
not-
or the,
That's not in the charter. Only the commission's in the charter.
okay, so revisions to the Parks and Recreation.
I'm gonna take a whack at that and see what I can come up with.
So, yeah, that's number 9, but I would, because there is an active commission, I'm trying to figure out if that's the correct title for what's going under it.
The
Is all.
commission is required by state statute. That's why it's in there. The budget issue
Okay.
of the department is something we're gonna recommend in our paragraph, is that they reestablish it.
Right,
the
okay,
department.
so that was just the only one that I was wondering about, that wording right there.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at it and try to fix that for tomorrow.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. With that in mind, any other businesses? I think we have a pretty good agenda for tomorrow morning then.
We're styling.
Hearing none, good for us. So our next day, the next meeting will be tomorrow, Thursday, May 27th at 9 a.m.
9 a.m.
Motion
Okay.
to adjourn.
Thank you,
Second.
Tucker. Motion made at 10:53. Is there a second?
Second.
Everybody's seconding it. Thank you. All right, we'll do roll call vote. Rick Atherton, Campbell Sutton,
Aye.
Curtis Barnes,
All right.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Tucker Holland,
All right.
and the chair, John Brescher, votes aye as well. All right, thank you, everyone. See you in 23 hours,
Be productive.
22 hours.